Yeah, and
In the desert?
yeah, he did.
Well, I heard that there was talk that he had stayed in the area and that the Aborigines were helping him. And I don't know how they know this part. Okay, so don't ask me for the details. But I remember reading something about the fact that they said he had made a belated attempt to return to Alice Springs. In other words, he stayed there too long. Didn't have, they gave him food and water, and he used up a big chunk of it before deciding, I should probably go home.
That could very well be it. Yeah, and so bad judgment. But
Yeah, for real.
He exhibited a lot of bad judgment through this whole thing.
Yeah, since he was missing for so long, a guy named Bob Buck was asked to go out there and find him, if at all possible. And he was a bushman, very experienced, and he spent 11 weeks looking around for tracks of Lassiter.
Yeesh.
Yeah, 11 weeks.
Wow.
He found signs, he followed the signs, and this guy must have been an incredible bushman.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. And he came across a gathering of Aborigines who denied any knowledge of him, but eventually they took him to the place where his body was. And they hadn't killed him, but it does appear they didn't really support him much either, and so he eventually died. And Buck searched for his notes and stuff, and otherwise just buried his body there. Eventually his body was relocated and moved to a different grave. Yeah, that was the end of Lassiter. And of course, the reef, as far as any notes, you'd think he'd write notes, draw a map, whatever. He didn't do that. Lassiter didn't do that.
Kept it all in his head.
Apparently, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and also samples, those rocks that he supposedly found, those were not found. So, yeah. So, somewhere out there is Lassiter's Reef. Or maybe not.
I was going to say, is we really, at this point, we have nothing to corroborate that it's real.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, Lassiter appears to be kind of dishonest, or was kind of dishonest, and there's, let's face it, there's lots of people out there who want attention.
Well, the thing that his behavior is what makes me think what I'm about to go into. I get the feeling that what he wanted from the Union was for them to give him the money to go do the search with maybe one or two people.
Yeah, but they insisted on a more structured thing.
Yeah, they turned it into this big thing. Like, I almost feel like he kind of wanted to take the money and run. And when he couldn't do that, oh crap, what do I do?
Yeah,
and he just played this game that blew up in his face.
Yeah, I think, according to his companions, he was just kind of sullen and,
he was
distant.
Screwed.
Yeah. I think you might be right. There's other reasons to doubt his story. In 1911, apparently, he was living in a town called, I'm probably mispronouncing it, Tabulam, which is on which is on the far east coast of Australia. So 1911 was one time when he claimed to have been way out in the west finding this thing.
But he was in a completely different area.
He was nowhere nearby. I've heard two different stories about where he was in 1897. I found on Wikipedia, they said that in 1897, when he claimed to have found it, he was actually in reform school.
I remember seeing that.
Yeah, although he himself, in his own autobiographical notes, claimed that he was in the Royal Navy for 4 years, beginning in 1897 and ending in 1901. Which means that even if he somehow found the reef in 1897, ran off and joined the Navy, got out in 1901, would he have been able to go back 3 years later, basically 1900, with Harding and find the reef again?
Yeah, there's a problem there.
Yeah, there's a little contradiction. And maybe he's just lying about serving in the Navy, and maybe he wasn't. But it does, if that's the case, it does sort of undercut his credibility a little bit.
Do we know, for Harding, do we have any record from Harding that he actually went on this expedition with Lassiter?
I don't know if Harding even existed, to tell you the truth.
Okay, yeah,
I don't know.
I mean, I did a little looking and I didn't see it, but that doesn't mean that it's not there. It means that I just didn't find it.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, there might have been a Joseph Harding, but doesn't seem all that well documented.
Okay.
And as to whether he actually went out and found the reef with Lassiter,
Who knows?
Not either. Who the hell knows? So, theories. It's real or it's not real? Yeah.
I think we just talked about that, didn't we?
I think it's not real.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a feeling it's not real.
Well, there's something in between, which is that somebody lost his wallet. And it's still out there in the desert. Yeah. Yeah, that could be it too. But I'm so sorry to our Aussie friends. Sorry, guys.
Probably not.
Yeah, I know some of you agree with me, and some of you are crushed. But and I apologize to those of you who are crushed. But yeah, I don't think it ever existed. Okay, so all right. Well, it doesn't exist.
Okay. All right.
Wow.
Well, that was fun. We just talked about 3 treasures that we don't know.
Definitely don't exist.
Yeah, we're pretty sure they don't exist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, guys.
Truly lost treasures.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the whole ship of pearls. I mean, it's like, are you kidding me?
It's a ship of fools.
Yeah.
Okay, well, if you want to see any of the research, because we will put up links to each of these stories on our website, you can visit our website, which is thinkingsidewayspodcast.com. This episode's there. Of course, there's going to be all of our other episodes are available there for download or streaming, so totally take advantage of that. We're, of course, on iTunes, where a lot of people do seem to still get the podcast from. If you're on iTunes, do take the time to leave a comment and a rating.
A good rating.
Those.
We want
Yeah, we appreciate the good ones more than
we
the
like
bad
them a
ones.
lot more, yeah.
You can stream us, well, from just about any streaming service at this point. Most of them have us. We are on social media, so we're on Twitter. We have Thinkin' Sideways is us on Twitter. Mm-hmm. Is it called our handle? Is that what they call it there?
Yeah, I think it is.
Or your Twitter username, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
We are on Reddit, so we've got the subreddit, and we are on Facebook, so we have the Facebook group and the Facebook page. Bear in mind, everybody, don't try and friend us on Facebook. You want to join the group because that's where all the action happens.
Mm-hmm.
Right on.
And last but not least is our email. So if you've got questions, story suggestions, comments, concerns, any of that, definitely send us an email.
Yep.
Email address is thinkingsidewayspodcast@gmail.com. And of course, if you enjoy what we're doing in the podcast and you want to help out with that, you're more than welcome to do that. We have a PayPal link on the site or Patreon, which is patreon.com/thinkingsideways. Patreon, it's kind of a contribute per episode basis, completely voluntary.
Absolutely.
You can continue to download for free, or you can say you want to give X amount per. It's totally up to you, but it does help us out immensely.
Yeah, if you're Donald Trump, just give us about $5 million.
That'd be great.
Yeah, that
Donald
would really
Trump,
be nice.
stop talking. All right, well, we've got to go because we're done here, and obviously we're about to get off track. So thank you, everybody, and we enjoy your holiday, and we will be talking to you next week.
Yeah.
Toodaloo, everybody.
Bye, guys. Thinking Sideways is not supported by bees who make heptagon-shaped hives. Instead, it's supported by the generous donations of our listeners on Patreon. Visit patreon.com/thinkingsideways to learn more. And thanks.
I don't understand.
Does not compute.
You never know.
Insufficient data to formulate a reply.
Stories of things we simply don't know the answer to.
Hi there. Welcome to another episode of Thinking Sideways. I'm Joe, your host, joined as always by
Devin?
and
Steve.
and we're here this week to talk about another cool mystery.
Yeah.
Yeah. This week we're going to talk about Louis Le Prince, who mysteriously vanished. Let me start off with a few biographical details about Louis Le Prince. He was born in France in 1841, moved to Leeds, England in 1866, taking a job working for a college friend in a brass foundry. I think he was an engineer. He eventually married, moved to the U.S. for a while, and began experimenting with motion pictures. He was trying to build himself a movie camera. He produced a 16 lens camera, which was kind of so-so. Essentially what it did is it took 16 sequential photographs.
Yeah.
But didn't quite work out so great because every photograph was taken from a slightly different vantage point. So it gave kind of a jerky result.
If you're trying to picture it, it almost looked like, to figure out how the lens configuration is, it's almost like the buttons on a double-breasted suit. In the
A really
front.
long one.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, or you can go and look up pictures of it on the internet because we have pictures of the machine. But
Yeah,
It wasn't a real accurate machine.
No, that didn't. But yeah, so he began because he didn't like the results on that one. He got a patent on it anyway, but
Smart.
started working on a single lens camera, and eventually produced a prototype and also a prototype projector. And he actually is credited with making the world's first moving pictures. Yeah. That was in Leeds, where he made those films.
England.
Yeah, Leeds, England. Yeah, he tested his prototypes
Before moving to the U.S.?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think this is after he came back from the U.S.
back.
And back to Leeds, and that's where he made his first films, which was in 1888. And by the way, those films can be found online. They're incredibly short.
Is
2.2
Is
seconds.
one of
Yeah.
them like the running? What's the running horse one?
That's Muybridge.
Oh yeah,
That's not this guy.
you're right.
Yeah. So, do you want to talk about that stuff before we talk about his mysterious disappearance?
Let's talk about. Let's just go through the story, and then we'll talk about the technology, and then we can go from there. That's probably
Okay.
the better way, so we don't break it up too much.
Okay, all right. Generally, Thomas Edison and the Lumiere brothers, who were French guys, they get all the credit for the invention of movies, but Louis Le Prince actually was the first out of the gate. He produced his prototype several years, I think, before Edison produced his. After he had a good functioning single lens prototype and projector, he made plans to go to New York to put on a public demonstration. And so that would have been 1890 when that happened. So that was a year ahead of when Thomas Edison applied for his patent.
Wasn't that kind of a trend in Thomas Edison's career?
What's
A little
that?
bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, a little.
Are we
yeah.
going to talk about that? Okay.
We are.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Okay.
How
Good.
can we not?
Yeah. I know.
Fair.
Yeah. So okay, now we get to talk about his disappearance. Woohoo! Yeah. Okay. In September 1890, Louis Le Prince went to Dijon to visit his brother Albert.
Grey Poupon?
Yeah, that was the town of. Yeah, it used to be Grey Poupon. They changed it to Dijon. Yeah, Dijon actually in French means Dijon. I don't know if you knew that.
Can we stop the mustard jokes?
Yeah, okay. All right. On September 16th, 1890, his brother Albert took him to the Dijon railway station and put him on a train to Paris, where Louis was supposed to meet up with friends to continue his journey to the UK and then on to America for the demonstration. Louis Le Prince had his prototypes with him, as well as his luggage. Long story short, when the train arrived in Paris, Louis Le Prince was not on the train, and a mystery was born. Also, his luggage and his prototypes were gone, too.
Huh.
None of the passengers reported seeing anything strange happening. Nobody saw somebody getting beaten or somebody getting drug off, or,
Did they say they noticed a dude with like really big bags?
Everybody had really big luggage in those days,
Yeah,
though.
that's true.
Yeah, it appears that nobody really noticed him, which actually in and of itself is a little strange because he was actually a big guy. He was like 6'3" or 4. He was a pretty big guy. French police searched the train. Then they searched the train line all the way back from Paris to Dijon, which is, by the way, quite a trip. That's quite a big swath of territory to search. They found no sign of Louis Le Prince, and his disappearance is a mystery to this day.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yeah, what's up?
How soon did they search the train? I've never been able to find details.
I have not either. Yeah, this happened obviously more than 100 years ago, so details are a little sketchy.
Well, it depends on the telling, though. Sometimes it almost makes it sound as if the train arrived and police immediately swarmed over the train
That can't
looking for
possibly
him.
be true.
Yeah.
No, there's no way. But that's when you do the reading, some of the stuff you come across gives that impression. But I don't. Trains don't normally stay at the station for
Well, if
extended
it was
periods.
Exactly.
Paris is the end of the line, though.
Maybe it would have stayed there for a little bit. But the thing about it is I'm not sure exactly when anybody raised the alarm about him. It might have been one of these things. Maybe there's been some distortion introduced to the whole thing, and maybe railroad employees eventually searched the train. Maybe the police did it. It might have been days afterwards, even. It could have been it could have been one of those things where it's like maybe somebody murdered him and stuffed his body in some little nook.
Yeah, but alternately, it could have been one of those things where, his friends were waiting to pick him up. They didn't see him. The conductor said, okay, we're all aboard. And somebody said, oh, no, wait. My friend was supposed to get off here. Can you just go check, make sure he's not asleep? They said, yeah,
And
sure.
then
They discovered that he was not there, and they said, they thought,
yeah, and so
foul
they
play or
and
something.
they went through the train and all that stuff, and so I don't know how thorough the search was, but
yeah.
So
And again, it's time before cell phones, so it's not exactly like you just call
Text him.
Yeah, say,
Yeah.
hey, where are you? And he doesn't respond, and you go, oh no.
I know. Yeah.
But also, he can't just say, oh, I missed the train, I'll be on the next one.
Which is
So you could just make the assumption, oh, he missed the train, he'll be on the next one.
Yeah, it's
Who
true.
knows?
So anyway, that's our mystery. This is a pretty short intro to this one. We're going to descend right into the theories. Unless
Well,
you want to talk about.
we need to explain
You wanna talk
kind of
about-
what he's doing here based
Okay.
on the time frame, because if you haven't ever done any research into the history of photography, this makes no sense in terms of how cameras worked. I mean, I don't know if you guys have had to do that. Okay, you're giving me looks like...
Well, I don't know what you're asking.
If you've had to do any research on the history of photography and stuff like that. Okay.
Yeah, I haven't.
I'm not the artist in this room.
I took classes in it.
No, I know that they invented the cell phone, and then
they invented the camera to go in the cell phone.
And then they invented the selfie, and then they invented the internet.
Yeah.
Okay, or somewhere in there. Yeah, that's what I know.
Well, so I know that this is part of Louis' history is that he was family friends with Daguerre.
Yeah.
Because if you've ever heard, you may have heard of the phrase a daguerreotype.
Yeah.
And that's a type of photographic image.
I don't know what that means.
A daguerreotype is a very simple way of making a photo. You basically take polished silver, a plate, and you put chemicals on it. They're light sensitive. You expose it like you would a film, photographic film. It's the same principle, but it's chemicals on a plate. And then you process it, and then you put a sheet of glass over it because what has been exposed, I can't remember whether it's what's been exposed stays dark or if what hasn't been exposed washes away. One of the two, it leaves an image, and that's a daguerreotype. And you'll see them, there's all these old tin photos of like Confederate soldiers and stuff like that. They're a version of that. But Louis the Prince was family friends.
Yeah, apparently
with
that
Daguerre
was a buddy of his dad.
Yeah.
So he spent a lot of time hanging out with him and learned a lot, and I'm sure that got him started on.
Oh yeah, so he knew about photography from that.
Yeah.
And then the other guy that you brought up was Muybridge, and people will know Muybridge, though they probably won't know his work. Is if you've ever seen, I think it's A Horse Galloping is the name of it, but it is a series of images that they put in. Is it a spirograph that they call it? Not a spirograph. When it's a cylinder with images on the inside and you can spin it.
Yeah.
And it makes it look like the image is moving. It's a very early, crude version of actual movies.
It's actually the earliest GIF.
Yeah,
think about
kind of
it. It really is.
Because it repeats. Well,
it just yeah,
and that's what Devin was talking about, is he took these images of a horse that was running, but he didn't actually make a movie.
It was like a flip book.
It was stop motion photography is what it was. There was a bet to figure out if a horse's feet ever all four left the ground at once. So to be able to figure this out, he needed a photograph. So he had, I think it was 16 or 28, something like that.
I think it was 16.
16 cameras in a row. Threads run across the course that pulled the shutter, so as the horse crossed it and snapped the thread, it would take a photo. And then he assembled those, and that's how you get the actual first movie.
It would have been kind of amusing if the horse had gone galloping down the course and all the cameras had toppled over. Who knows? Maybe that happened the first time out.
He's like, should not have used rope. But the point is that Le Prince wasn't the first one to invent this kind of technology. People have been working on this for a while.
Lots of people.
Muybridge is the first one who proved that you could make a moving image, and then from there, everybody else. This was the age of the gentleman inventor. Everybody was making these things.
The Renaissance man.
Yes, the Renaissance man. But that's how this whole technology worked, and that's what his 16 lens camera was the equivalent of, in one box, what Muybridge had done with 16 individual cameras.
Yeah.
And of course he was shooting on paper, so it wasn't as good. He's the one who figured out how to use celluloid.
Yeah, he did.
To make an image.
And he would take sheets of celluloid and cut it in strips and stuff like that. And
which is why his movies are so short.
Well, yeah, I know. The interesting thing about this, too, is that eventually Thomas Edison basically owned the movie industry, and it was all run out of Menlo Park, New Jersey. And he formed a company. I can't remember what the company was called, but they essentially set the rules for filmmaking in the theaters. One of the things that they insisted on was that no movie be longer than 20 minutes, because they were of the opinion that the attention span of the American public was too short for anything more than 20 minutes.
Well,
I would kind of agree with that.
Yeah,
me too.
It's amazing we've gotten away with the length we've gone.
Yeah, I know. But he's got that. But he had kind of a stranglehold. Everybody had to pay him royalties. because he sewed up the whole thing with his patents and everything. And so that's why Hollywood got created, is because of Thomas Edison. Because all these people from the East Coast were fed up with him, setting the rules, making them pay royalties whenever they wanted to show a film at a theater, and telling them how long their movies could be, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So they moved out to California, which is in 1915, which is as far away from Edison as they could possibly get.
Yep.
And the reigning court out there was the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, and so the Ninth Circuit was not particularly sympathetic to monopolies such as what Edison had going.
Oh, he tried to set up monopolies constantly.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, we're going to talk about it, but he was a complete and total a-hole. Mm-hmm. Everything that he did great things, but he was also a dirty businessman.
Oh, yeah, very much so, yeah. And then the whole story of him and Tesla is kind of interesting in and of itself.
That warrants a lot of reading. If you've never done that, you need to.
Oh yeah, definitely, yeah. But there was a big war, over the whole thing.
Oh yeah.
And Tesla invented alternating current.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Alternately, you can watch the Bob's Burgers episode.
Yeah, there's
about Topsy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Could you imagine how screwed up our infrastructure would be
Topsy,
if we had direct current everywhere?
Oh yeah.
Topsy.
Oh yeah.
It'd be different.
It would be terrible.
Be better.
No, direct current can only.
Better.
You are quoting You're quoting a cartoon over
better.
here.
I'm not saying it'd be. No, I'm personally saying it'd be better.
No.
I'm not quoting.
Power plants every 5 miles or 10 miles because that's all you can transmit electricity.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that'd be a great system.
Yeah, just right. It's the arcs, right? You just have it arcing in between things.
Yeah, there you go.
Just have Tesla coils everywhere.
Yeah.
It's perfect.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
In fact, we can just generate power in our own homes. See, you don't need power plants. No?
I have no idea where that just went.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. It's fine.
I'm working on a small nuclear reactor myself. Back to Louis the Prince. We're going to talk about theories as to how and why he disappeared.
Yep.
Okay, first theory up. Thomas Edison did it.
I believe it.
Yeah.
I don't actually.
Yeah, no, actually, the Prince's widow believed that Edison was responsible for a little foul play.
I could see why, though.
Yeah, well, he actually did have an interest in this whole thing. He applied for his first moving picture patent a year later in 1891.
After the disappearance.
After the disappearance, yeah. In France, the Lumiere brothers staged their first moving picture show in Paris in 1895. So it does appear that these people, especially Edison, really benefited from Louis the Prince's disappearance.
Now, let me ask about the patent thing, because I could never find conclusive answers to this. Is you read that the Prince applied for a patent for the single lens camera in the United States.
Yeah, and it was denied.
And then 2 years later, Edison applies for it and gets it without a hitch. And they deny, according to the readings that I've seen, it was denied because it infringed on another patent.
Yeah, but Edison's design infringed on the same patent.
Correct. But is there truth to that, or do you know? I couldn't find out if that was true or not.
I have not been able to find that out for a certainty.
Okay.
Didn't Edison work in the patent office for a while?
No, that's Einstein.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Wrong famous guy.
Wrong famous E guy.
You sort of wonder when it comes to Edison, though, if he maybe didn't have a mole in the patent office.
Yeah.
You kind of wonder
he
about that.
He filed patents like mad, though. That's the thing. Mm-hmm. He filed through what was the name of the place that he had Edison?
You mean Menlo Park?
Menlo Park, thank you. Through Menlo Park, he filed for bunches and bunches and bunches of patents.
Oh yeah.
So I almost wonder if his patent went through because somebody went, another Edison patent, stamp, go.
Yeah, that could be. Or I think it could be too, because it might be one of those dealios where you kind of gotta like bribe somebody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, this was a time where that was not uncommon in this country.
Yeah. So Edison gets his patent, and Louis Le Prince does not. But as I was saying, Edison really benefited from Le Prince's disappearance. And the family felt like Edison and the Lumieres were taking credit for Louis Le Prince's invention. But apparently they couldn't sue. I read in one place that only Louis Le Prince could take legal action under American law about anything regarding patent infringement. And so The family could have taken legal action if Louis was dead, but he wasn't legally considered dead.
That took years, as it
like
always
seven,
does.
Takes like 7 years.
Yeah.
And then he was declared, I think he was declared legally dead in 1897.
By
But
which point it's too late.
yeah, it's too late. I mean, they're off and running, and so yeah. So anyway, years went by, and this is fairly recently. Like we're talking, like probably 10 or so years ago. A guy named Alexis Bedford was a grad student at New York University, and he was doing research into the history of motion pictures. And he was in the archives of the New York Public Library researching Thomas Edison's work. And he found this worn leather book, which turned out to be one of Edison's notebooks, which I assume he had lots of.
I would imagine.
Yeah, and in this book, he found a note dated September 20th, 1890, in Edison's handwriting, which read, quote, "Eric called me today from Dijon. It has been done. Prince is no more. This is good news, but I flinched when he told me. Murder is not my thing. I'm an inventor, and my inventions for moving images can now move forward." Unquote. So Alexis Bedford took that journal back to New York University and gave it to a historian there named Robert E. Meyer for authentication. And this guy, Meyer, examined the journal that included handwriting comparisons and some sort of computer tomography scan. Or CAT scan. And he decided the journal was real. The note dated September 1890 was in Edison's handwriting, so it was the real deal. It was the smoking gun. Thomas A. Edison, crime kingpin. Yeah.
That sounds like him.
Yeah. And at this point, there was a similar mysterious disappearance of another inventor who Edison happened
Later
to know.
on. Not
Yeah,
at the
this is
same
a
time.
while later. Yeah, in 1913, Rudolf Diesel disappeared in September 1913. He boarded the steamer Dresden in Antwerp, Belgium, bound for the UK, and that was September 29th. And the day of, he disappeared. Apparently, the next day he was supposed to show up at breakfast, and he didn't. So they went and checked his cabin. The bunk had not been slept in. He was nowhere to be found. They searched the ship, couldn't find him. And they looked at his journal, and the last entry, which was September 29th, was nothing more than a cross. And the cross looked suspiciously just like one that Edison would have drawn.
Was Edison on the ship?
Edison was not on the ship, but you don't know that his agents weren't.
So, for anybody who hasn't picked up on it yet, though, Joe, why is this guy important?
Diesel? Rudolph
Yeah.
Diesel? He
Yeah.
invented the diesel engine.
There we go.
Yeah, and that obviously, as you know, the diesel engine is a real big deal.
It's an okay deal. I don't know about big deal.
It's kind of a big deal, yeah.
He drives like half the world.
Yeah, it's and, ships and trucks and trains and oh my God, yeah, there's diesels all over the place. Yeah, 11 days after Rudolf Diesel disappeared, a ship ran across a body in the general area. And they didn't really actually feel like dragging the body on board their ship, which I don't know why. But they did get into it, and they essentially lowered a boat, went over, rifled the pockets, took some personal effects, and in the end, it turned out the personal effects were Diesel's.
I bet there's some superstition that goes on there.
There might be,
You
yeah.
don't really want to bring a dead body onto a ship.
Well, yeah, this is 11 days later, so the body was probably kind of ripe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also it's totally possible that they didn't know by then, right? Where was he going on the ship?
He was going from Antwerp to the UK.
Oh, so they knew. Never mind.
Yeah.
After a visit to the U.S. Right. Got it. Sorry.
Yeah.
It was
So
like,
there we
if he
go.
was going to the U.S., it's possible they would have not known yet that somebody was missing.
But
Well, yeah, they just saw a body. They
Yeah.
went to get some identifying things off of it, and then they just let it go.
So Diesel died in
So
the
Diesel
water.
died. Yeah, so it's yet another guy with a connection to Thomas Edison,
mysteriously.
mysteriously dies. Yeah, so Thomas Edison. Well, anyway, the whole story about the journal from the New York Public Library, it kind of has a stink of BS all over it, I think. I don't know what you guys think.
Well, based on the legwork you did, I'm going to agree.
Yeah, I agree too.
Yeah, well, I called New York University. They'd never heard of this historian named Robert E. Meyer. And I asked them, I said, well, what if he used to work for you, but he doesn't anymore? And they said, well, if he worked for us, if he was on our faculty, he would have published stuff. And so if you do an internet search, that stuff will turn up. And it didn't. And I had done those searches, and none of that stuff turned up. This guy, as far as I could tell, never existed.
Which means likely this journal. never existed.
Yeah, exactly. But well, yeah, and frankly, it doesn't really pass the smell test.
Yeah, I mean,
because-
even if it did, like, who does that?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
writes
Murder
that in their
somebody.
journal?
I know. Really. And as for Rudolph Diesel, I don't think Edison actually had any interest in developing a diesel engine. Apparently, that was one of Diesel's disappointments. Is he tried to spark some interest for that in America, and apparently because the diesel engine is more efficient, he thought, well, who could not want this, right?
But
Well,
also, the diesel engine was already a thing, right?
No, it
when
was
Diesel
just-
died?
No, gasoline-powered engines were a thing, but not diesel, because
Yeah.
Diesel invented the diesel.
That's what I
engine.
mean. By the time Diesel died,
yeah.
He had, but
He
it
had
hadn't.
invented
It
the-
hadn't been widespread.
but he
Yeah.
had invented it already.
Yes.
Yeah,
and
he
he
had
probably
it.
already had the patent for it, I presume, since it's called the diesel engine.
Yeah.
Here's the weird
presumably.
thing about patents is they're not international.
Mm-hmm.
They're by country typically, which is the screwiest system in the world.
Well, it seems it was enough that it's named after Diesel,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
I mean, so it seems like even if Edison had been interested in it before, Diesel had already made a name for himself. Everybody already knew, hey, this guy is the one who did this.
Yeah, but that never stopped. I mean, if Edison was truly interested in the engine, he could have patented it in the United States, because he did things like that where he would get the patent, somebody else would fight him and say they own the patent. He would then say, oh, let's be business partners. He'd bring him in as a business partner, then buy him out. And then that person disappeared from history, and Edison was the guy who
Yeah,
made the
yep.
invention.
All right.
Yep.
Yeah.
So he did a lot of hinky things, but I actually want to say that even though I don't think that this journal existed, I think that the way that you read it and you interpret it may be incorrect, and it may have just been, if it really existed, an innocent note.
It could have been.
Because if you read, okay, so this is 4 days after Le Prince disappeared.
Yeah.
Right? Okay, so it says, and I went back to it, and it says, Eric called me today from Dijon. It has been done. Prince is no more. So it has been done could mean something about the fight is done.
Yeah, maybe he bought him out or something
Yeah.
like that.
And,
yeah.
you know, the good news is, this is good news, but I flinch. Murder is not my thing. Like, oh, God, he died. Like, killing a man is not my thing. Like, it's crazy that he died.
It's
You can
still-
read into it a completely different way.
It
I
still
don't know.
implicates him because Le Prince was never seen or heard from again, nor was his stuff. So at the very least, that implies that Edison knew that Le Prince is dead.
No, it doesn't.
Yeah, it does. Murder's not my
Kind of looks
thing.
to me that
The
way.
guy
yeah.
said he was murdered. I mean, the guy doesn't know squat. The guy that calls him 4 days later, it's probably in the local papers. Local inventor, or, you know, French inventor disappears. Manhunt underway.
I think it sounds-
Oh,
that
I
it
see
means
what you're
anything.
saying. And so this guy calls and says, "Hey, Le Prince disappeared.
Somebody
He's
killed
probably
him.
Dead.
He's
And-
gone.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
I don't
Of course-
know. It's still.
yeah. I could see that, but here's the deal: is Louis Le Prince at this point has been missing a grand total of 4 days, and so there's no reason to assume he's been murdered. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean Agatha Christie disappeared for how many days?
11.
Yeah,
And
there you
people
go.
said she'd been murdered right away.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah. Well, anyway, I think that whole thing was just made up.
Oh, I completely agree, but I
Yeah.
also see how it wouldn't be as...
necessarily. I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
It's like he didn't have a part in the murder. He just heard he was murdered. It's like, yeah, cool. That frees up. Yeah, I get
He wasn't
that,
being
yeah.
the evil monster that we've called him this whole time.
I mean, a little bit, though, because he said it was good news.
Yeah, I know.
Well,
I mean, a little.
Yeah,
At the
well,
very
he
least.
he wasn't a nice guy, though.
It doesn't matter. I don't think
Yeah,
he wrote
no.
it anyway.
Let's
so-
continue.
No, I don't think he did.
What else?
Back to diesel. I was just going to say, interest in the diesel engine at that time was just kind of minimal because we were Americans and we weren't really interested in a more efficient engine.
No.
We still interested.
Yeah. Also, Rudolph Diesel was having financial and health problems, and it's kind of assumed at this point in time that he committed suicide. But of course, at that time, there were some conspiracy theories about the whole thing. One of which involved the German Secret Service, who rubbed him out supposedly because